Before getting into the drama today, I just wanted to take a moment to celebrate these authors on their new books. Later in this video, you will learn how they are victims, but for just a moment, let's celebrate them.
Main victims of this are The Poisons We Drink by Bethany Baptiste, So Let Them Burn by Camila Cole, To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X. Chung, Voyage of the Damned by Frances White, and Mistress of Lies by K.M. Unright. These are all upcoming books, so please support them and their authors after everything they've been through. And also another author really unfairly targeted is R.M. Virtues. He is a black indie author, and Cait once starred his Gods of Hunger series.
Before falling asleep on December 12th, I was scrolling through Twitter, and I came across this apology from someone named Cait Corrain. Having no idea who Cait is, and without reading the apology, I went straight to the replies, as one does. The moment I saw the top reply, "The meds made you racist," I knew I needed to dig into this deeper. I love reading, but it's not something I do incredibly frequently. I am most definitely not on book Twitter or book talk, so I really went into this drama blind. Let's read what their apology says. Dear friends, family, readers, fellow authors, and members of the publishing community, since June 2022, I've been fighting a losing battle against depression, alcoholism, and substance abuse, the full scope of which I've hidden from everyone in my life out of shame and a misguided belief that with the right medicine or enough therapy, I could beat it. If this paragraph had been written anywhere other than an apology, I wouldn't question it. If anything, I'd empathize because I understand the struggle of struggling with mental illness. However, starting off your apology like this is definitely suspect and doesn't sit well with me. Whatever they did, I hope there's more accountability later on in this apology. In late November 2023, I started a new medication, and on December 2nd, 2023, I suffered a complete psychological breakdown. During this time, I created roughly 6 profiles on Goodreads, and along with 2 profiles I made during a similar but shorter breakdown in 2022, I boosted the rating of my book, bombed the rating of several fellow debut authors, and left reviews that ranged from kind of mean to downright abusive. Okay, so Cait is an author who made 8 separate Goodreads profiles to bomb the ratings of other authors' books. If you're not familiar, Goodreads is an app that allows people to track what they're reading, leave reviews, set reading goals for the year, receive recommendations on future books to read, hold community discussions. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's truly an amazing app for readers. What I'm really stuck on and struggling with in this paragraph of the apology is seeing the correlation, other than time of occurrence, between the medication and bombing the ratings of other authors' books. As we'll learn, Cait doesn't even officially have a published book out yet, so they should have known how long, stressful, and difficult of a process it is for a new author. Let's take a pause from the apology and get some backstory. So, who is Cait Corrain? Born in 1993, Cait is an artist and author. They hold a bachelor's in fine arts from the Savannah College of Art and Design. In college, they specialized in sequential art. If you don't know what that is, the best known example of sequential art is comics. So it's an art form that puts images in a specific order for the purpose of graphic storytelling. For a short period, they also worked in film and TV. However, I could not find any details on what projects they specifically did. They have lived in Los Angeles since 2015. Their Instagram page is littered with birds and mythological/witchy cosplay. And their bio says their pronouns are she/they. In 2020, they began selling a multitude of designs to be put on shirts and bags. Then, in June 2021, they announced they wrote a book called A Crown of Starlight. As they described, it's a space fantasy retelling of the myth of Ariadne and Dionysus. At the time of the announcement, they were still looking for an agent. If you're unfamiliar with the creative process of getting your work published, agents play a major role in getting you where you need to be. They are the business-minded intermediaries between the writer and book publishing houses. Only a few weeks later, in July, Cait announces their new agent, Becca Potos. She is a senior agent at Reese Literary Agency. Nearly a year later, on May 27, 2022, Cait announces they are getting published by Del Rey Books, one of the biggest science fiction and fantasy imprints in the world. Del Rey's owner, Penguin Random House, which I'm sure if you've ever seen a book, you will recognize the logo, will be included as the publisher for Canada. The announcement also mentions that the book would not be published until 2024, nearly 2 years from the announcement. Cait's Twitter boasts an impressive 47.9 thousand posts. This is just my own personal red flag in a person, but they also retweet a ton of their own tweets. If people didn't engage with it the first time, why do you think they cared the second time? The absolute majority of their tweets are about their dog, the struggles of being a writer, and updates about their book. I found this pair of tweets particularly interesting. Y'all, intentionally seeking out posts by people who hate you and want to make you feel bad is self-harm. You are intentionally putting yourself into a position to feel bad. Please stop doing this to yourself. It's really bad for your mental health. It puts you in a state of stress and upset and anger, and there's no amount of dunking on them that will undo the adrenal rush to that initial jolt of negative emotion. Don't give yourself depression on purpose. I have so many issues with this tweet, but I mostly just want to put an emphasis on the fact that they point out how negative comments can be harmful to a person's mental health. Yet, that did not stop them from intentionally dragging down authors. That doesn't sound like someone who cares for anyone but themselves. It also sounds like they're quite guilty for doing this, hence being so insecure that they bomb reviewed other authors' books. In other hypocrisy news, I also found this tweet from March. One person tweeted, "People should boost and support the authors who make the work and art they want to see in the world, and that's all I have to say." Cait replied with an upside down and a melting face emoji to agree with the message. So, Cait, you agree. A person's time should be spent uplifting artists and not knocking them down? On November 30th, they shared really exciting news about their book being selected for the May 2024 Illumicrate box. Illumicrate is a subscription box where bibliophiles receive a newly released book each month, as well as 4 to 6 pieces of merchandise curated exclusively by Illumicrate. So less than a month ago, Cait hit the jackpot for new authors. An agent, a publisher, and now they're being promoted through Illumicrate. I can only imagine how many writers are working so hard for all of these opportunities. Cait was on the road to being a successful author, possibly a New York Times bestseller. So what the hell happened? Insecurity. Cait allowed insecurity to destroy all their hard work. But how did they get caught? Dating back to April, authors began to realize several of the same Goodreads accounts were leaving negative reviews on sci-fi books projected to release in 2024. These accounts were also liking the negative reviews from one another, which boosted the negative reviews on those specific books. One of the most suspicious things, though, was some of these authors had not yet sent out advanced readers' copies, meaning very few people would have access to the book. The key factor into getting caught, though, was that Cait also used these accounts to boost their own book. After all of these negative reviews, these accounts all of a sudden are giving a 5-star review to Crown of Starlight, liking other high reviews and voting for it on several different reading lists to include Adult Queer Romance 2024, Books I'm Dying to Get My Hands On, and fiction by non-binary authors. Many authors began collecting the receipts and screenshots and sharing them with one another. To cover their ass, Cait tweeted this on December 5th. "Nasty surprise of the day was learning that there were fake accounts messing with my Goodreads rating recently. If you've actually read my book and want to rate and review it, that would be great, as readers' interest pre-release tells my publisher that my book is worth investing in." Cait continues, "I guess this explains why my rating was fluctuating so much. If you like my book, please rate and review it. If you hated it, you're also entitled to share your opinion, but making fake accounts to manipulate my book's rating is something else entirely. I'm gonna go be sad now." This is so embarrassing now that we know the truth. Those tweets have obviously been deleted. I'm gonna go be sad now? Huh? I don't even understand why Cait attempted this route of cover-up because their book wasn't affected negatively by the book bombing. They literally boosted themselves. So if their plan was to play the victim, they probably should have left themselves at least one negative review. I mean, even Regina George was smart enough to put her own burn into the burn book to make it look like Katie did it. Come on, you could have done a lot better, Cait. Less than a day after Cait's stupid tweet, one of the affected authors, Bethany Baptiste, tweets this: "Strangers want to know so y'all don't support that author while simultaneously not supporting the debuts affected anyways. That's why nobody's saying anything right now. This is hot tea for y'all. Meanwhile, debuts have to deal with an albino snake in the henhouse. Let us process this." This tweet results in Bethany being called an ableist because a different author with albinism thought the tweet was calling her out. This author, who we now know as Meredith Mooring, is also friends with Cait, creates such a big outroar that Bethany further explains. "You know a deceptive person can be called a snake. You know an albino snake is a white snake that exists in nature. Where I'm from, black folk call deceptive white folk albino snakes. A snake in a henhouse is an old southern saying, which means a traitor is in our midst. So by combining the two, albino snake in a henhouse, it means a white deceptive person betrayed us." I want to note that you may see screenshots of these tweets coming from a white woman named Susan C. Sheffield. As you'll see with the Twitter handle, this is still Bethany. She calls Susan one of her alter egos, and it's entirely satirical. Anyways, I see no issue with what Bethany said, especially with her explanation, but everyone's entitled to be offended by what they're offended by. I really struggle to understand what this had anything to do with Meredith, considering no one knew she was friends with Cait until hours later, and calling Bethany a black woman who is disabled an ableist is crazy, but I digress. Meredith argued with Bethany and other writers both on Twitter and in private messages, but we now know Meredith has apologized and Bethany accepted the apology. But at the time, Bethany's tweet resulted in another account sharing all of the screenshots against Cait. Okay, I've had enough. How fucking dare anyone spread lies about Bethany, one of the victims of the review bombing, to deflect from the allegations. Here are 31 pages of receipts of the review bombing. Everyone, judge for yourself. Notice how the evidence goes all the way back to April. The victims who compiled these gave so much grace to whoever did this, and also, to my knowledge, tried to resolve it in private. But the account just kept popping up. If you're not familiar with them, Xiran is a YouTuber and best-selling author who we saw at the beginning of this video shouting out the affected author's books. Their debut novel, Iron Widow, has a sequel titled Heavenly Tyrant coming out in April of 2024. They were a huge player in calling out Cait on Twitter. Many of the screenshots within the link they shared have been used throughout this video. In the reply tweet, I love how Xiran points out that these screenshots date back to April. The victims who were collecting evidence did not want to call out Cait publicly and were told to let it go. Cait also clearly did not take these private conversations as an opportunity to correct their wrongs. Xiran was not going to let it go, and now here we are talking about it. Meanwhile, in a Slack chat full of debut authors, despite their name not being mentioned specifically yet, Meredith drops this message. The author is working on a statement. They didn't personally do this and they have proof. So now we know why Meredith went with such a defensive stance. Some theorize that she was trying to start drama and save Cait, but who knows? However, I do want to note that the authors affected have said multiple times they didn't know who Meredith was or that she was friends with Cait. So her reaction was still odd. The whole situation just seemed incredibly sketchy and odd, especially with the villainization of a black woman. But that's just my thoughts. On that same Slack chat, Cait begins sharing information. The first two screenshots are from my conversation with my other group that Meredith is a part of. She can attest to this. The next screenshots are of the conversation I had with her. You're all entitled to your opinions, to believe me or to think I'm lying, but I will say that my agent, and I through them, spoke with Xiran last night about this and shared the following screenshots as well. As stated, the first message is to a different group that Cait and Meredith are in. Cait wrote, "Someone I know made a bunch of fake accounts, rated my book high, added it to list, then trashed other authors in our debut group. They picked Danielle Jensen and Molly Chang because I previously mentioned feeling insecure about the disparity in our advances." Be so for real right now. Then Cait shares a screenshot of a long conversation with this Lilly person. Lilly says, the other night when you were worrying that your book would get overshown by bigger books at your publisher, I wanted to help, so I made a couple accounts to rate your book high. I'm sorry, I really didn't think it would be a problem. Cait goes straight into it by saying, what the fuck? Why? I don't need fake reviews to help me. Jesus Christ. Are you sure you feel that way, Cait? Lilly continues to apologize. I'm sorry, I really didn't think it would hurt. I was trying to be nice. But Cait is pissed. Oh my God. I don't even know what to say. I don't need you to step in and try to be nice with this. Do you have any idea how patronizing that is? How humiliating? How much damage you could have done? I'm going to be sick, literally going to vomit. Someone just posted this screenshot in my writing group. Here we see the first tweet from Xiran broadly calling out Cait. Lilly responds, I really didn't mean to hurt you. I was trying to help. God, I can't even keep talking to you. What the fuck? I'm so sorry. I don't care. That was such a shitty thing to do. Is there anything else you want to tell me? Anyone else you targeted just for shits and giggles? Any other people you wanted to destroy in my name? There were a couple other books that I left more reviews on to try to make it look less obvious. Names. Who? I don't know. Just some other people on the debut list that I saw getting a lot of buzz. I just wanted to help. Cait ends with this. This is psychopath behavior. You know what's psychopath behavior, Cait? Faking this conversation and making a person up to take the blame for you. Because that is exactly what you did. And that's absolutely insane. And I only just read 2 of the 8 screenshots that Cait shared. Cait is quite literally screaming at no one and saying everything they deserve to hear for doing something so shitty to new authors. But also in the text, Cait is only talking about how this could have ruined their career, asking if there were any other people you wanted to destroy in their name. So again, no care for the other 2024 debut authors. The fake conversation continues with Lilly apologizing profusely as Cait gets more mad. Lilly then goes for a different approach and becomes an iconic little villain. Actually, no, I'm not sorry. I was just trying to help. Yeah, I messed up, but I was trying to be a good friend. It's not that big of a deal. And if it is, maybe you should try being nicer. If your career is so fragile that something like this could break it, then maybe I should keep going. If you're tensing up at the cringe of Cait saying all of this to themselves, don't worry. We all are. Lilly continues into her madness. You're just insecure and pathetic, and your book is terrible. I was just trying to help you because I felt bad for you. You're gonna regret this. Then Lilly shares a screenshot of what is meant to be Cait's email address. So now Lily's a hacker. Can we also appreciate the spacing of the smiley face here? Absolute beautiful Photoshop skills. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, the conversation wraps up with Lilly, fake Cait, outing themselves for being racist. I just remembered something important. A lot of my bad reviews were for POC authors. When the call-out post eventually comes for you, they'll call you a racist too. You're welcome. When I was first looking into what happened, I was hopeful that the comments about the negative reviews primarily being given to authors of color was just an unfortunate mistake. But of course, it wasn't. Now that we know these messages with Lilly are fake, we also know Cait is fully aware, as they write, that a lot of my bad reviews were for POC authors. This wasn't just an attack on new authors, but it was racially charged. How disgusting is that? The publishing industry is already predominantly white. How vile does one have to be to specifically target POCs and attempt to boost their white ass? Not only that, but many people have pointed out the names Cait used for their review bombing
were names that were clearly meant to sound more ethnic. There's Chantal, there's Ose Young, to imply that this was an Asian reviewer giving another Asian author like Molly X Chang 1 star for her book. This was pretty much an act of yellowface.
Going back to the fake text screenshots, Cait clearly isn't great at Photoshop because these screenshots, timestamps, jump around from saying today and yesterday within one image. In a TikTok, Xiran also explains how the Slack group asked for various forms of proof that Lilly existed, and Cait had nothing. No text, no Discord, no Twitter, nothing. Obviously, that's because Lilly doesn't exist, but a group chat full of creative writers knew that immediately, and they called it out. I can imagine this is horrifying for you, but you need to figure out how to tell the truth about this situation and think about how some jealousy and competition led to this situation where most of the POC authors in the Slack won't get a fraction of the industry support earmarked for you. I hope other authors who have similarly disgraceful thoughts about POCs will think about their views and privilege after getting a glimpse at how non-white authors are treated in the industry and their peers. This is a disgrace. Cait replies, "You're right, but I will say that my jealousy wasn't specific to POC authors. I felt intimidated by another white author at my imprint too. It's still wrong that I felt that way at all, and I will absolutely own that." Referring back to the screenshots with Lilly, someone says, "I hope everybody notices how she immediately can't pull out any earlier conversations with this other account." Cait replies, "I will share screenshots when I am back home. You believe what you want." And that same author hilariously fights back with, "Okay, you take your time to Photoshop them." Cait was also claiming they knew Lilly from a specific Star Wars fandom, and people from that fandom called bullshit immediately, saying, "I've never heard of a Lilly within the Reylo community, at least not within the OG circle." And, "I've never been super social, but I've been in the Reylo fandom since the beginning and haven't heard of a Lilly, not within the fandom base, at least before it got bigger. I'm so confused as to what's going on right now." Of course, Cait continues with a victim mindset and leaves the chat saying, "Every single one of us in here has dealt with our own insecurities, but the action I took on mine stopped at talking about them to someone who I considered a friend. This person is someone I knew from a time in Star Wars fandom, where I was a well-known fic author and a lightning rod for unhinged behavior, the type of behavior that anyone else who was well-known in the fandom at the time still sees around online. I have no further details. I haven't heard anything else from them. I never responded. I'm now going to say this. If you are one of the people who she targeted, please message me or my agent," adding, "Thank you so much for listening. I'm actually sobbing right now. I've been online long enough to know that once people make up their minds about what someone has done, that's usually it. And the prospect of not only losing the respect of my peers, but of people actually thinking I wanted to hurt them is sitting like glass in my throat. I would never in a billion years do something like this, and I'm just so sick over it." Cait then references Lemonado, this fake person Lilly's username, and how they are no longer on Discord or Twitter. And finally, I'm getting conflicting advice from different sources: agent, friends, publisher, and pressure from all sides to do a billion different things. But this is an unmoderated space, and it's clear that no matter what I share, it's not going to further the conversation. I'm going to remove myself from this chat as my presence is not helping anything. I want to note that Cait didn't bomb completely random authors. They even went after someone they would likely call a friend. Taya, writer of the Hurricane Wars, even wrote a heartfelt endorsement for Cait. And what did Cait do? They gave Taya a 2-star review. The level of insecurity on Cait is horrifying. A few days later, Cait's publishers share some tweets. Del Rey Books says, "We're aware of the ongoing discussion around author Cait Corrain. Crown of Starlight is no longer on our 2024 publishing schedule." And Daphne Press shares, "We can now confirm we will no longer publish Crown of Starlight by Cait Corrain or any other works on that contract." And then Cait's agent shares, "Cait and I will not be continuing our partnership moving forward. I deeply appreciate the patience of those directly impacted by last week's events as I worked through a difficult situation." And finally, Illumicrate. "We're aware of the conversations around the author of our May 2024 book, Cait Corrain. We can confirm that Crown of Starlight will no longer be featured in the May 2024 Illumicrate box." An author that had it all and then lost it all. It is a bit sad to see someone get literally everything taken away, But I'm so happy to see the consequences to these disgusting actions. Cait should be ashamed and horrified. No one asked them to do the things that they did. It was entirely on Cait. They were also given time to admit fault and apologize privately, but that obviously never happened. And about 10 hours after the Illumicrate tweet, Cait tweets their apology. Let's get back to reading that. Again, I want to acknowledge that mental illness is hard. It sucks. Changing and trying medications over and over again is exhausting. But with that in mind, I don't remember my doctors warning me of any potential of becoming racist or attacking people. So to start an apology with this information feels irrelevant to me. I'm a firm believer that mental health may be an explanation to your actions, but it will never be an excuse. Some people have made the argument that their most depressive states include a complete lack of energy, arguing that it would be nearly impossible to find the energy to create 6 new accounts and maintain 8 total accounts while in this state. As for my depression, I'd agree. In my most depressive state, I just sit in bed and rot all day. Sometimes I lack the energy to even pick up my phone. However, that's not true for everyone. Some people do experience mania and other high energy related symptoms. I just wanted to address that, as conversations on mental illness are difficult but incredibly important. Not everyone experiences the same symptoms. However, again, racism is definitely not a symptom of any mental illness, being drunk, or taking new medications. That was already within Cait. If their mental illness or drunkenness took away an ability to filter their hatred, an apology is only the start to fixing such terrible actions. Again, mental health may be an explanation to your actions, but it will never be an excuse. 2 of those authors, Molly X. Chang and Danielle Jensen, are fellow Del Rey authors. Let's take a look at the review Cait left on Molly's book, To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. I can't believe Del Rey spent $500,000 on this when they could have spent $500,000 on anything else. Sorry, not sorry. 1 star. All right, well, I think it's safe to assume this review was solely based on jealousy. Thank God Del Rey didn't waste $500,000 on you, Cait. Kamala Cole and Bethany Baptiste just happened to be on the wrong Goodreads list at the wrong time. I felt no ill will towards any of them. It was just my fear about how my book would be received running out of control. My memories of this are extremely fuzzy, so it's possible there are a couple other authors. If so, please know I take full ownership of what I did to you as well. I'm sorrier than you'll ever know. There's nothing I can say to erase what I did to you. Yeah, it really doesn't matter if it was fuzzy, Cait. The receipts are out there now. People know the authors you targeted, and you could have taken the time to find the list and name each one of them in your apology. When I was slapped on the wrist by Goodreads and vague tweeted by a handful of people, I panicked that my secret was about to get out, and rather than taking responsibility for my actions, I tried to cover up my tracks. Still in the middle of this breakdown, I made up the world's sloppiest chat with a non-existent friend who was supposedly to blame and sent fake apologies for the actions of said friend, which only made things worse. I betrayed the confidence of my agent, my pub team, my readers, and my friends, and betrayed my own deeply held values. I also dragged one of my dearest friends and fellow debut authors into the mud with me when she came to my defense. I'll leave her name out of this so as not to pull her in even deeper. However, if she wishes to come forwards, I'll apologize to her publicly as well. Let me be extremely clear. While I might not have been sober or of sound mind during this time, I accept responsibility for the pain and suffering I caused, and my delay in posting this is due to spending the last few days offline while going through withdrawals as I sobered up enough to be brutally honest with you and myself. I know some of you won't forgive me, and I recognize that you're not required to. No one ever wants to be judged by their worst actions, but that's not always up to us. I'll be reaching out to everyone directly impacted, though that may take time since I'm checking into an intensive psychiatric care and rehab facility, which means I'll be mostly off social media, as I need to give 100% to the program if I want it to stick. All I can do going forward is to try to live my life in a way that shows you these aren't empty words. Yours, with so much love and the utmost heartbreak, Cait Corrain. I don't think they ever actually apologized in this 2-page letter or mentioned the whole racism issue. Wait, no. They did say that they're sorrier than you'll ever know. Like many apologies today, it sucks that this came after they lost everything. That instantly makes me question just how genuine it may be. But Cait lost it all, and according to their letter, they're going to get some serious help. It's probably best that they're off social media because their name is ruined. Here was Bethany's reaction to the apology. Wrong time, wrong list. No, we were exactly where we were supposed to be. I have PTSD, depression, and anxiety. I understand the wrong meds or dose can make your mind feel like it's snapping in half. Meds don't make you racist. Racism is in you. You hit it by lurking and plotting. So, what do you think of this mess of a situation? Do you think Cait's book was even going to be any good? What did you think of their apology? Did I miss anything? The controversy was so much bigger than I could have imagined. As a reminder, help support the authors who were affected by Cait's selfish actions. It seems enough of y'all have actually done it because Amazon's already grouping these pre-orders together. I will say, I know I'm not usually into science fiction books, but this TikTok from Xiran convinced me to buy their book.
Now, I cannot guarantee that you'll like my book, but here are some testimonies of it being an easy read for people with ADHD and people who haven't picked up a book in a long time. It's a sci-fi reimagining of the only female emperor in Chinese history. It features giant robots based on Chinese myth creatures and a love triangle that ends in polyamory. I have no problem spoiling that because there are bigger twists.
I also want to emphasize that Cait would have never had these consequences without Black, Indigenous, people of color. They are the ones who collected the receipts. They collected the insane amount of screenshots necessary to prove Cait to be guilty. And as we learned about this shit with Bethany and everything she had to deal with, it wasn't an easy task for them either. So definitely pre-order her book, The Poisons We Drink. It will be out on March 5th. Help support all the other authors' books as well. The links will be in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment below, and maybe even share it with a friend. I know I've been telling everyone about this drama because it's just too good. Thank you so much for watching. I hope your year ends amazingly and you have a very happy new year. Bye!
Happy New Year. All my subscribers, Happy New Year.